Hey guys, tonight I'm going to do a few quick tips on how I get through long drives. I personally am someone that doesn't mind doing longer drives. I actually kind of like it to an extent, but most of that's because I feel like I do a decent job of handling them, preparing for them, and I'll go through a little bit of those ideas and concepts right now. So today is a good example of it because I drove 3 hours each way to get my sister, 3 hours there, 3 hours back. And overall, my tips are starting off. I like to take at least one break for every, call it 2 hours, let's say. So I took a 3 hour drive. After 2 hours ish, I took a break. Um, Gives me a chance to go to the bathroom if I need to, stretch my legs. Also, obviously, good for getting gas, getting food, that kind of thing. And just break up the monotony of it. It's easy to slip into like a highway hypnosis kind of scenario if you don't take some breaks every now and again. This is especially true at night. I would even say at night you could double this rule to an extent. Like if you're driving for more than an hour straight, go take a break real quick just to walk and get some fresh air and things like that. Another good thing that makes the long drives go much faster is obviously some distractions, and not distracting you from driving, but distracting you from how long it's taking time to pass. So by this I usually mean obviously driving with someone if that's an option, a friend, whoever you're driving with, have someone in the passenger seat next to you to not only keep an eye on you, make sure you're staying awake, staying focused on the road, all that, but also does help the time go by faster by talking to you. Alternatively, I like to listen to podcasts a lot while I drive. I like podcasts a lot more than music just because it's a little more interactive. I'm actually physically listening to someone, which, as I get into a story or something, helps things go by faster. And also, most podcasts are anywhere between usually 30 minutes to an hour. I would say majority podcasts, at least the ones I've always listened to. I have some podcasts that stretch closer to like an hour and a half, 2 hours, but most of them, let's say they average about an hour. So it's a good way to break up the time because, for example, on my 3 hour drive, I was able to listen to, I would have, if I wasn't driving with someone, I would have been able to listen to the equivalent of three podcasts or so, and it would have been a good, it wouldn't have seemed as long. Like three podcasts doesn't seem as long as a 3 hour drive, so to speak. One important tip I usually use that some people will probably disagree with, but I always use navigation, even if I pretty much know where I'm going, just to keep me aware of where I'm going at all times, helping me navigate when I'm not paying as much attention to the specific directions, and also helps me pay more attention to the road because I'm constantly looking at the map, seeing how far away I am from my next turning point or milestone or whatever. And then, of course, with any kind of distractions, I'd want to specify, obviously, that you don't want to ever look away from the road for any reason. So always use your handless controls for whatever you're using on your phone. If you're using a podcast or playing music or whatever, try and use handless controls as much as possible. Majority of cars have Bluetooth built in and controls right on the steering wheel, so you don't need to take your hands off the wheel to skip to the next song or podcast or change the volume or any of that. Even making calls, most steering wheels have that capability with Bluetooth. And then even if you're like me and have some older cars that don't have Bluetooth built in, you can get adapters for one that have Bluetooth built in, and then they usually have like two buttons on it to do forward, back calls, all that kind of stuff, and you get used to where those buttons are. Um, and then obviously for texting wise, don't text and drive. I prefer to put my phone in do not disturb, and I haven't done it before, but I know there's definitely apps and ways to make sure that if someone does text you or call you or whatever while you're driving, it'll send them an auto text that says, "I'm driving, call me back later," or "text me back later." Um, a more obvious tip, I felt like I should add it in this kind of highway hypnosis list, but avoid night drives as much as possible, regardless of how much you like nights or any of that. It's better to avoid nights. I've done a lot of night driving in my time, especially senior year of high school. Around that time, I did a lot of like driving at 4 a.m., driving at really weird times and stuff, 11 p.m., like just driving very late at night when it's very clearly dark out. Not only is it dark, much harder to see, better chance of people that aren't aware of their driving as much being out on the road. Uh, it's more probable that things kind of pop out in front of you, whether it be animals or things that are lying on the road that you would usually avoid very easily in the daytime, all of that. A big tip that I think a lot of people don't think about as much is to bring water with them when they're driving. It could be very easy to dehydrate while you're driving. Realistically, you should be drinking water almost constantly, like, I don't know, probably every 15 minutes, half hour, you should be wetting your mouth, your palate, your throat. So to not drink water for like a 3-hour drive or something is absurd. You should definitely bring water with you. Make sure it has plenty of water in it. Even have a backup water. Not only does it help you hydrate in general, but it helps you stay awake, especially if you're having a cold water or something. It'll help keep you up, keep you active, keep your mind on something. And then it's also important because most people think, oh, if I get thirsty, I could stop and grab something. Chances are if you stop and grab something, you're going to do it all rational Americans do, and you'll say, why would I waste money on water when I can get free water kind of thing? I might as well buy a soda, or might as well buy a drink, a Gatorade, whatever, and those will usually dehydrate you more than they hydrate you, so I avoid them. That's a general thing for me, that I avoid sodas and all that because they don't hydrate you as well, but also health and all that and wasting money, blah, blah, blah. I've talked about that in a past episode. And then I'll wrap it up by saying a good general tip for driving as a whole, but especially long distance driving, is to preview your route ahead of time. Get familiar with the general way of where you're going, what you're doing, and also ensure that you have obviously the proper destination built in and the preferred route you want to take. So especially if it's somewhere you know or you have a general idea of the direction you're going, it could be that you have ways you prefer over others. For example, when I drive to my sister's school like I did today, I greatly prefer going through Lancaster than I do like Hershey, Pennsylvania, just because it's much more rural, straight, less traffic and less traffic signals, I guess you could say. Not specifically traffic lights, but traffic like intersections and things like that. So with that, I think that pretty much wraps up my list. I wanted to be somewhat quicker, which it wasn't, but I'll end it here. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in tomorrow's episode.